All right, seventh grade. Welcome to your first use of the flipped classroom. I hope you enjoy this. Before we get started, the one thing you need to know is that it isn't advantageous for you to just take down the notes. If you do not listen to what I'm saying in these slides, you will miss out on a ton. So remember, with this, you can pause, you can rewind, you can fast forward, use that to your advantage, but do not skip over the things that I'm talking about in this. Otherwise, it's easy to miss out on a lot of vital information that might end up on your test. So, this is going to be the start of chapter 13 today. We're going to take a look at the rest of the countries of South America beyond just Brazil. And in section 1 today, we're going to talk about the Northern Tropics, which are the countries of French Guiana, Suriname, Guyana, Venezuela, and Colombia. Now, with your learning targets today, by the time you're done, you should be able to describe how migration affected the population of the Guianas. You should be able to identify the geographic influences on Venezuela's economy. And you should be able to discuss the problems of one-crop agriculture in Colombia, which we will talk about. So, here we go. Ready? Let's do it. Now, grouped around Brazil, the 12 other countries of South America can be separated into 3 regions. The 3 regions are the Northern Tropics, the Andean countries, and the Southern Grassland countries. The countries of the Northern Tropics are located along the northern coast of South America, and they share some characteristics, but they are different in their ethnic makeup, their economies, and their physical geography. Now, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana together are known as the Guianas, the 3 you can see here in the picture. They share a tropical wet climate, vast stretches of rainforest, and a narrow coastal plain that touches the Atlantic Ocean. But their human characteristics give each a distinct personality. These differences reflect each country's history and pattern of colonization, and they also set the Guianas apart culturally from most of the rest of South America. Where Spanish or Portuguese is spoken and where Roman Catholicism is the main region. Now, Guyana's official language, for example, is English because it used to be part of the English colony of British Guiana. Dutch is spoken in Suriname, which was a colony of the Netherlands until 1975. Many people in both countries are Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, and French is the official language of French Guiana, which is not an independent nation, but an overseas department of France, and it's Catholic. Oh, sorry here. So, when it comes to the composition of the people, their ethnicities, it varies in the 3 Guianas and it reflects patterns of migration. Europeans brought enslaved Africans to work on colonial sugar plantations. Asians from China, India, and Southeast Asia began migrating to the area as workers in the mid-1800s after slavery was abolished, very similar to the Caribbean. Today, most people in Guyana belong to those 2 major ethnic groups. People of Asian descent make up about half the population, many speaking languages of India. Another 43% are of African ancestry. Suriname's population has a lot greater variety. Just over 50% are descendants from the Asian workers who came in the 1800s, but only about 10% are of African descent. About 30% are mixed race, people of mixed African and other ancestries. Now, most of the rest are indigenous peoples. The ethnic makeup of French Guiana is very similar to that of Suriname, except that our mixed race are the largest group. People of European descent also live in French Guiana. So at this point, I'm going to flip it, but if you're not ready, just pause it, take the notes down, and then hit play, and then you'd move on to the next slide. So, our economic activities. Although their populations are different, the 3 Guianas have similar primary economic activities because of their shared natural resources. Fishing boats harvest large quantities of fish and shrimp from the sea, and in the lowlands, farmers grow sugarcane and rice. From the hills of Guyana and Suriname, miners extract bauxite, a mineral that's used in making aluminum. Guyana is one of the world's largest bauxite exporters. And here you can see a boy with a fishing net fishing in the river. Now, Guyana's larger western neighbor, Venezuela, is a striking contrast. While fewer than 1 million people live in Guyana, Venezuela's population is almost 24 million. Guyana's per capita gross national product of about $780 makes it the poorest nation in South America. Venezuela has an annual per capita GNP of more than $3,530. So per person, they make $3,530. In Guyana, the average life expectancy is 64 years, while the average life expectancy in Venezuela is 73.1 years. Now, Venezuela's culture is more typical of the rest of South America than are those of the Guyanas. Its official language is Spanish, and its people are mainly mestizos or of European descent. Nearly all are Roman Catholics. Now, Venezuela's landscapes are varied. In the northwest corner, the Andes tower over a narrow Caribbean coastal plain. A lower range of mountains, hills, and plateaus, the Andean highlands, stretch across the rest of northern Venezuela. Most of Venezuela's people live in fertile mountain valleys, and the capital city, Caracas, is located in this area. So a lot of them live up in this area, right up through here, and you can see right here is the capital of Caracas, right along the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, side by side with the sidewalk cafes, universities, and busy department stores of Caracas are scenes of immense poverty. As Brazil's cities have their favelas, Caracas has its ranchitos, or small shacks, where almost one-third of the people live. In the last 30 years, the government has used its oil well to launch massive programs to improve living conditions for the country's poor. But unfortunately, like we saw in Mexico, like we saw in Central America, the Caribbean, and in Brazil, we have lots of poor people who live in homes that are typical to this. Now in southeastern Venezuela, another mountain system, the Guiana Highlands, covers nearly half of the country. Near the border with Brazil are dense tropical rainforests. The world's highest waterfall, Angel Falls, is located in Canaima National Park in the Guiana Highlands. This humongous waterfall drops more than 3,200 feet into the Chirun River, which is a tributary of the Orinoco River. Between the two highland regions, the great Orinoco River flows through central Venezuela. Along both sides of the river stretches a wide tropical grassland or savanna region called the Llanos, which means plains in Spanish. The Llanos flood during the rainy season from April to December, and for the rest of the year, the hot sun of the dry season quickly burns the vegetation and the soil becomes parched and cracked. Still, this is a very important area for grazing cattle. And there you can see the humongous waterfall that is Angel Falls on the left. Now, Venezuela lies within the tropics, but its varied climates depend more on elevation than on distance from the equator, very much like Mexico City. As in many mountainous areas of Latin America, Spanish terms are commonly used for the different climate zones that occur as elevation increases. Venezuelan farmers grow different crops at different elevations. Coffee trees, for example, are ideally suited for growing in the climate zones called Tierra Templada, or the temperate country. At that middle elevation, temperatures are relatively mild. And here you can see this is a farm that's located further up into the mountains, and you can see they don't grow nearly as many things. But the climate, the physical geography stays the same. The higher up you get in elevation, the thinner the air, the colder it gets. So you could be right on the equator, but if you're 5,000 feet up in the air, a mile high, you're going to find cold temperatures. Now, Venezuela's wealth can be described in one word, which is definitely oil. There are 4 large beds of liquid gold that lie in the eastern Llanos, the Orinoco Delta, and the lowlands near Lake Maracaibo, and you can find them also offshore. Petroleum dominates Venezuela's economy, making it one of the top 10 oil producers in the world. Experts have suggested that Venezuela could become the Western Hemisphere's biggest oil and gas producer in the 21st century. While it has huge oil reserves, they are finite, meaning they are non-renewable, they will run out. Venezuela, therefore, has reinvested a large share of its oil profits in other industries. It is developing bauxite and iron mines, building power plants, and setting up factories that will provide jobs when the oil wells run dry. This is very similar to what we talked about with Mexico when they had the oil crisis. They put all of their eggs in one basket. Mexico went all in on oil. The oil market dropped drastically, and their economy was crushed. Now, Venezuela doesn't want to fall, guilty to the same type of issue, so that's why they are trying to diversify their economy, which is a very smart thing to do. Countries that can diversify and do more than one thing definitely can take on, if let's say their food goes bad for a year. Well, if they have lots of money in oil, they can absorb some of that. If they're large producers of different natural resources, aluminum, different metals, maybe gold and silver, things like that, they can afford to take hits in other parts of their economy and they're still okay. Now this shows you right here the different oil fields and the amount of pipelines that run through their country. So obviously the Orinoco Belt near the Orinoco River is a large oil producer for them. And then we do find some offshore spots in the Atlantic and then over here as well near Lake Maracaibo, which is located right there. So now in the country of Colombia, it's named after Christopher Columbus. It's the only country in South America that borders both the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Its population is around 40 million, and it makes it the second most populous country on the continent next to Brazil. Now, like neighboring Venezuela, Colombia has three distinct physical regions. They have the lowlands, the mountains, and the llanos, or grassy plains. About 75% of the country's people live in fertile valleys between three cordilleras, or parallel mountain ranges, of the Andes. Bogota, the capital of Colombia, is the largest city, and it lies on a high plateau of the Andes. So here you can see the cordilleras right here. Here's one, here's two, here's three. And Bogota is right there. So here you can see it better. It says Bogotá, but Bogota. Another fancy city or a well-known city is Medellin right here. This is where Pablo Escobar had his cocaine empire, which we'll talk about a little bit later here. The drug trade's very, very big in Colombia. Now, although many different crops can grow in mountain climates, Colombia's farmers depend heavily on one crop, I should say one legal crop. Surpassed only by Brazil, Colombia is famous for coffee, which is grown on more than 300,000 small farms. Most of the country's farmland is owned by a few wealthy families who rent small amounts of land to tenant farmers at high prices. This is very similar to what we saw in Mexico, what we saw in Central America and the Caribbean. Tenant farmers, or people known as campesinos, are often barely able to grow enough food for their families because they focus their efforts on producing a cash crop of coffee. A country that depends on one crop, such as coffee, is at risk if world demand for coffee drops or if the coffee trees are destroyed. Officials are trying to reduce Colombia's dependence on a single cash crop by encouraging the export of other farm products. That's the exact same thing that Venezuela is doing. Let's diversify. So Colombia is trying to do that. Now, although coffee is Colombia's major legal crop, two other products have proved to be extremely profitable for a small minority of Colombians. Huge quantities of marijuana and cocaine, a dangerous addictive drug made from the leaves of the coca plant, are exported illegally from Colombia. Authorities estimate that smuggling illegal drugs brings twice as much money into Colombia as coffee does. Those who control the illegal drug trade also hold considerable power. The governments of Colombia and the United States are working together to stop the drug trade and the violence that are associated with it. So here you see this picture. I'm going to flip over to the next one. It's the same shot here. But these are the different boats that go out from, as you can see, a lot of them come out of Colombia. So they're going here, they're making stops in the middle of the ocean where they will transport through either the Caribbean Sea or out here through the Pacific Ocean. A lot of it goes in through Mexico, which then in turn comes into the United States. Some of it also comes out east, goes into the Dominican Republic, where then it is taken to Miami. So this is from 2007, and this alone shows this is just the amount of suspicious activity that we find out on the seas. We can see 212 events up here in the right in the Caribbean, and 155 events down in the Pacific. Now, to finish off, Colombia has had a pretty stormy political history since the wars for independence from Spain ended in the 1820s. Continuing disputes between two major political parties reached a violent climax in the 1950s when about 200,000 people were killed in a bloody, bloody, bloody civil war. In 1958, however, the two parties agreed to work together, and we still do have civil strife that continues as rebel groups compete for control of both the streets and the countryside. And a lot of that today is still drug-related. Like many South American countries, Colombia struggles with the challenges that result from social inequality. A few people hold the majority of the country's wealth and power, while many suffer from extreme poverty. So that is the end of Section 1. This will lead us into Section 2, where we talk about the Andean countries, and Section 3 later on in the week will deal with the grassland countries. I hope you liked this. I will definitely ask you when I get back on Tuesday how this went for you. Try to finish this up in study hall if you can, and if we still need time to go over more things on Tuesday, we can do that as well. Your homework will be on Tuesday. So for today, focus on finishing these notes. Hope you liked it. Have a good day.